fluctuating weight can affect someone's voice, and when they're my age can really, it can ruin voices. Karen's never did. One thing she always had was that voice.
Well, Richard Carpenter, was a tremendous arranger, and I think that he had a very clear sense of what he wanted things to sound like, and that was that choral approach to pop. It was the richness of harmony. It was also like leading with melody and all of the beautiful flourishes that, you can bring in through orchestration, whether or not it's an oboe, the tinkle of a piano, or what have you. And, when every step of the way, Richard was very much a part of making every decision as a producer, as an arranger, and also occasionally as a composer.
When you look at arrangements, at what he did, wow, there was nobody better. Him and Barry Manilow, to me are kind of like, he would hear something and just know how to make it sound, and he knew how to do it for his sister.
Karen Carpenter's voice sits in the chest in a way that makes it feel like it's in your chest when you're listening to it. And I think that, that sense of heart, that sense of also like being seated deeply in the soul is one of the things that people really connect to. And it's the lowness of that voice that makes it feel like it's sitting there. And she's inspired generations of singers who haven't had a kind of stereotypically high, poppy female voice to explore what that soulfulness is.
Karen's voice was unique. When you heard the first few notes, you knew exactly who you were listening to. And I was just talking about her to somebody the other day, and I said, her voice was like the female version of Mel Torme. It was that velvety, smooth, mellifluous, rich, pitch-perfect sound that almost sounded like an instrument. And that's kind of what I remember, is that velvety, smooth, pitch-perfect kind of, and the feeling that you would get when you heard it. Because it wasn't just about hearing the sound. It was like that kind of feeling that you felt when you were hearing it.
There is a way she says a word. There is a gruff thing that comes in so every once in a while. And I think to be a great artist, you must have experienced some sort of pain. And we all know the stories about Karen. We know her struggles, we know her demons, but I bet you there's some things we didn't know. And I don't know what those are. And I can tell you that she definitely battled her self-image.
Superstar is the gut punch. It is the thing that I think allows people in subsequent generations and later generations to look back and think about the Carpenters as a serious and profound musical act. I think that that refrain, "Don't you remember you told me you love me, baby?" Like the fact that, just the whole scene that's painted in that song of listening to the radio, of there's so much radio in the Carpenters songs, that the whole scene that's painted by that and the kind of long distance longing in that song. I think the thing about Karen's voice is really that there was always a hint of sadness even when you thought she was singing about joy. Or even when there was a hint of a smile or kind of playfulness to it. There was something about the way that the voice sat low that made it sound melancholic. And for most of the time, she was singing about unrequited love. Honestly, those are the songs that people remember most and often cling to. At least for me, that's what really resonated with me, are the times that she sang about needing to be in love, not being able to be in love, or having no one love her back. And I think for a young person growing up, as a LGBT person, that resonated with me because, we never know if anybody's really going to love us back. And I think that the way that she sang about that with such sincerity and earnestness and heart felt like a torch song to me.
Gosh, when you think about what she did with Rainy Days and Mondays Always Get Me Down, I do think, and not to get weird, but I do think, some people are born with some sadness. I think Karen might have had that. How does she know at that age, at 20, 21, maybe she was down. Maybe she battled depression. that is nothing to be shameful about. But back then, imagine depression. No, you buck up and figure it out. Even I'm from Oklahoma, and if I say I went to therapy or counseling, people are like, oh, a little weird. But even back then, she couldn't probably discuss any of her insecurities or fears. What about being with her genius brother and maybe not succeeding? What about failure? The first time it was written about her weight, and she plummeted, which, by the way, did not affect her voice, if I may. Fluctuating weight can affect someone's voice, and when they're my age, it can ruin voices. Karen's never did. One thing she always had was that voice. I'm a big believer in spirit. I'm a big believer in the Lord. Whatever you want to call it. For me, it's the Lord. I believe that she had spirit in her that kept her voice for her, because that's what she had. Does that make sense? The one thing that she had that she knew she could count on was her voice. And God probably knew that never to take that from her. But to be 20 and sing right, I couldn't have done it at 20. I was still trying to figure out, German lieder with Miss Birdwell at OCU, trying to understand where my voice was even sitting. What are these high notes? What do I do with them? Karen knew already. Her brother and her family would probably want us to remember her music and, her trailblazing. But she was a woman and a human, just like the rest of us.
It's hard to know exactly how Karen's death impacted the general public. I know that there was an outcry. There was a massive sense of grieving, not just among her fans, her avid fans, but everybody that loved her voice and loved their music. It was like, how can somebody that seemingly that pure and that perfect vocally be gone? It's hard to reconcile. And yet, at the same time, it caused people to realize this was right around the time that my book came out, so there hadn't been many things published about what it's really like to be anorexic, and that there's even hope to recover. It was very secretive. Nobody talked about it. It was, that thing that everybody swept under the rug. And so for her to pass away, and for people to feel this sense of grief and loss that was so massive globally, not just in the United States, they felt the grief, but they also felt the shock of realizing this illness is not a joking matter. The lack of self-esteem, the self-hatred, the self-loathing that people go through, the feeling of letting everybody down, the feeling that you failed everyone, including yourself, that's not something that you joke about.